I used to pause the rewatch on the Harrenhal pair scene because it felt like somebody finally saw her. Turns out, I was watching a man try on a face the way you try on a coat in a store you're not going to buy anything in. Jaqen H'ghar killed 3 men for a 12-year-old girl, taught her the only Braavosi words she'd carry for the rest of the show, and walked off wearing a different face. 3 seasons of the fandom call him her first real ally, her unlikely mentor, the one good thing that happened to her at Harrenhal. He was none of those things. He was a stranger trying on a stranger's face, and the moment we mistook for tenderness was the moment we joined a list. And the worst part is the show is in on it. The pair scene is scored like a confession. The wall walk is shot like a love letter. The show doesn't just let Jaqen perform sincerity, it performs it with him. So let me back up. Season 2, Episode 5. The Ghost of Harrenhal. HBO, April 2012. Early in the episode, Arya saves 3 prisoners from a burning carriage. One of them, white-streaked hair, half-smile, comes back to her later with this: "The Red God takes what is his, lovely girl. Only death may pay for life. 3 lives I will give you." Listen to the grammar. A man, lovely girl, 3 lives I will give you. Count the first-person pronouns. There are none. He never uses the word I as a subject pronoun in the entire arc. Not in the cell, not on the wall walk, not at the goodbye, not at the door of the temple 2 seasons later. I want to name this because it's the diagnosis disguised as a quirk. Call it the third-person tell. The fandom calls it his charm, his lilt, his thing. It is not his charm. It is the cult's working grammar, and it is the one tell he never drops. A man has no first person left. Same episode, half an hour of screen time later. Arya names her first target. And later still, the tickler is found dead in the Harrenhal courtyard with his neck twisted around backward. Arya goes to the body and looks up. On the wall walk above her, eating a pear, Jaqen draws one finger down his own cheek. A single tear track. Like a tear that wasn't there. This is the scene I paused on for a year. I thought I was watching a man who hadn't expected to feel anything and felt something anyway. I was watching a man who knew exactly which gesture meant grief in the room he was performing in. What does it mean when a man has to mime his own emotions? There's a clinical word for it, and once you know it, you can't unknow it. Winnicott called it the false self. A personality built early in life to win the approval of an unreliable caregiver, behind which the real self goes silent for so long it sometimes never comes back. The tear isn't grief. The tear is the costume. The grammar isn't charm. The grammar is the costume. The man isn't a man. The costume is the man all the way down. And what we'd been calling his depth was the depth of someone who has been doing this so long he doesn't have to think about which face goes on which day. I had a person like this in my 20s. I'm not going to tell you who. I'm not going to tell you how I met him, what he did, or how it ended. You already know, you had one too, or you've spent the last couple of minutes hoping you didn't, and the hoping is part of why you're still watching this video instead of going to bed. Okay, the Faceless Men. Let's talk about who's running this. The show wants you to read them as ancient and mysterious. The Hall of Faces, Season 5, Episode 6, Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, May 17, 2015, wants you to read it as sacred. The chamber is lit like a cathedral. The score swells like a revelation. Arya descends a stone staircase and the camera tilts up the pillars in a long contemplative shot, and the show invites you to read awe. I want to read it the way I'd read it if it weren't on television. A windowless basement full of trophies of people who used to exist. Each face was a self. Each self belonged to somebody. Each somebody is now nobody, and what is left of them is a piece of skin on a wall, organized for retrieval by people who needed to wear them. That's not religion. That's recruitment infrastructure. The Faceless Men don't treat becoming no one as a spiritual achievement, they treat it as a job requirement. There's a psychologist named Robert J. Lifton, who studied Korean War prisoners who came home unable to recognize themselves. He named one of the things their captors did. He called it doctrine over person. The captors believed in the doctrine more than they believed in the captive in front of them. That belief was the lever they used to pry the captive's person out of the captive's body. That is the Faceless Men's training. Not as a metaphor, as an operating manual. The temple, the rooms, the chant, the corpse washing, the lying drills, the poison the senior students hand to the junior students. All of it. And here's the part that broke my read of him. In the book's book version, not show, just one paragraph, I promise. A Feast for Crows opens with a novice at the Citadel named Pate. Pate is poor. Pate has stolen a key from his archmaester and wants to sell it to a man called the Alchemist for a single gold dragon. They meet. The alchemist gives him the coin. Pate dies on the spot. The coin is poisoned. The alchemist walks off wearing Pate's face, Pate's name, Pate's hands, Pate's life. In the next book we meet that man again. And the man wearing Pate is the same man who, in the show, hands Arya his coin and says valar morghulis. By the time we met him at Harrenhal, the warm man, the lovely girl man, he was already a stack. The Persine tear belonged to face number 12, or 20, or however many, which means the version of him Arya called a friend was not a person making a choice to be kind, it was a face making a choice to be useful. And the difference between those things is the difference between the rest of this video and a goodbye episode of a buddy show. 1 second on the coin, because I keep coming back to it. It's the worst gift in the show. We talk about it like it's a token, like the time he saw her distilled into iron and pressed into her palm. It is not a token, it is a business card. He hands a 12-year-old a business card for a temple of professional self-erasure, and the fandom calls it sweet. I'll come back to the coin, I promise. Where were we? Right. The training. I want to say something now that took me 3 rewatches to let myself say, and I don't think it's about Jaqen. He's the friend who only ever showed up when you were useful to him, and you spent 10 years calling that closeness. I'm not talking about a villain, I never am. I'm talking about a person who learned very early in their life that being a person didn't get them what they needed, so they stopped being one, and got very, very good at standing where a person was supposed to stand. The third person tell, the a man, a girl grammar, wasn't just his cult's grammar. It was the only grammar left to someone whose first person had been trained out. Ask yourself, what kind of person can't say I? And what does it cost to keep someone like that close? The Harrenhal Jaqen is the version of him that has been doing this so long he's almost convinced himself. The Bravos Jaqen, the one we're about to talk about, is the version of him that has stopped trying to convince himself and is now in the business of training other people to do what he did. Which is, by the way, what people like this always do eventually. They don't keep the costume to themselves, they recruit. Watch what the training actually is. Throw away everything you own into the canal off the bridge, gone. Tell me your name. No, that isn't your name. Try again. Now lie to me. Now lie to me better. Now lie to me as a different person than the one you just lied to me as. The training is everything you do for someone you loved. Run as a cult curriculum. Strip the possessions. Rename the self. Certify the obedience. Reward the dissociation. Call the dissociation serving the many-faced god. And remember the door scene. Season 5, Episode 2, The House of Black and White. Arya arrives at the temple, exhausted, alone, 12 years old, and the kindly man opens the door and tells her, "There is no one here by that name. That's the first lesson, delivered at the threshold. Your name is the first thing we take." Arya throws Needle into a pile of rocks at the waterline and digs it back out and hides it, and the show wants us to read that as her keeping her identity. It is also a 14-year-old girl learning to lie to the people training her, which is, by their own curriculum, the lesson. She prays the list every night. Cersei, Walder Frey, The Mountain, Meryn Trant, Tywin Lannister, Eileen Payne, The Hound. She doesn't pray, she files invoices. And Jaqen, in this stretch, is her mentor. Mentor isn't right. Mentors leave you with something of theirs. He left her with something of his own that she had to spend 3 seasons putting down. He isn't her mentor. He's her recruiter. And he's good at it because he was recruited too, by someone wearing a face he didn't choose, and he is the one who didn't make it out. Season 5, Episode 10, Mother's Mercy. Here is where the curriculum shows its teeth, and this is the moment the show finally lets you see what the training has been the whole time. Arya goes off curriculum and kills Meryn Trant. Meryn is on her list. Meryn is also, and this is the part the fandom argument always trips on, technically a name the Faceless Men could have sanctioned if she'd been honest about wanting him dead and asked. The books of the many-faced god should balance. They don't. She comes back to the temple, she poisons the wrong man. She poisons Jaqen with the vial the wife had handed her. He drinks it, he dies, he doesn't die, but for one beat she thinks he has, and the show plays it as if he has. She pulls the face. Underneath is another face. Underneath that, another. The last face is hers. She goes blind. She is not punished because she killed someone off the books. She is punished because she killed someone for herself. That's the distinction the doctrine makes, and once you see it, the whole order shows its teeth. Selfhood is the crime, not violence, not vengeance, not even disobedience. Selfhood, the act of having a reason that was your reason. The blinding is just the late fee. I want to stop here for a second. Because the case I've been building can sound like I think the man is a monster, and I want to be careful with that. I don't actually know whether he liked her. I keep wanting to believe he did. I'm not sure that matters. I'm not sure that liking her, if he did, would have changed a single thing about what he was doing to her. And to be fair, the tickler tortured peasants for sport. Polliver was a war criminal. Meryn Trant killed Syrio Forel and beat the king's daughters on order. The deaths Jaqen oversaw at Harrenhal were not on their own unjust. The curriculum was monstrous. Some of the work it produced wasn't. That's the part of him I keep coming back to. He gave a frightened girl 3 real kills she had chosen, in a castle full of men who'd done worse. If that were the whole story, he'd be a side character with a soft cult of his own, and I'd be in it. It isn't the whole story. Season 6, Episode 8. No one. The waif is dead. Arya stands in front of Jaqen and tells him, "A girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I'm going home." And he smiles. That tiny half-smile. Tom Washicha gave an interview to The Hollywood Reporter on June 17, 2016, Josh Wigler, 5 days after this episode aired, that I think about every time I watch this scene. Washicha said Jaqen had been constantly testing her from the start, that he never actually expected her to become no one, that the whole training, from Harrenhal to the temple to the waif chase, was an evaluation, that the test was whether she would refuse the curriculum. The smirk at the end is him being pleased that she did, which is either the most generous reading of his teacher or the most damning reading of his cult. I think the actor is right, and I think it's the second one. And here's the thing I cannot get past. Every single faceless man in that hall was once someone like her. Every face on the wall belonged to a kid the cult told they could become no one. Every face was a self that someone gave up. Every face was a kid who said yes to the offer she said no to. He wasn't training her. He was recruiting the next face for the wall. And the only reason there isn't one of her up there is she walked out the door. About that coin, she kept it. She didn't use it. She passed the test by keeping the option and refusing the costume. The worst gift in the show turned out to be the test. She failed it correctly. So when I pause the rewatch now on the pear scene, on the iron coin, on the Harrenhal goodbye, I don't see kindness. I see a man whose only working register is mimicry, performing tenderness at a child who had nobody else. And I see myself, at 20, mistaking attention for love, calling someone's availability for me, when it suited him, a friendship, building a decade of memories around the few moments he chose to show up, and editing out the much longer stretches when he didn't. That's the third-person tell in real life. The friend who never quite says I want. The friend whose warmth never quite costs them anything. The friend whose closeness, when you go back and time it, always lined up with what they needed from you. Some of you have a Jaqen. Some of you are one. Both are survivable. Neither is what you've been calling it. Some people in your life were never really there. They were just very good at standing where you needed someone to stand,